right, thanks everybody for having patience with me. I really have not had a lot of time lately, and even right now, I've only got enough time to do maybe one or two videos. I'm going to delay uploading part 6 to Rev 12 and Egyptian Mysticism because it's going to take a lot to do part 6. Part 6 is going to be connected to what we see here, the star tetrahedron, Star of David, Solomon's seal, or circumscribed tetrahedral geometry, however you want to call it. When we return to that video series, you're going to get a further understanding of everything that I revealed to you about the sacred feminine and its connection to Ishtar. Briefly, you're already seeing it here within the seal. You see right now begin to form the XX chromosome that identifies female chromosomes. It's a modern assemblage that's been adopted to identify the female chromosome, XX. Now, what I want you to know is that they are getting the inspiration to give the female chromosome this symbol from this symbol right here. This is where the root of that information is coming from. And as I've told you, they used the females of our kind, just as it says in Genesis 6, to establish an elite race that would do their work, to do their bidding, that would eventually break the seal and produce this fallen prince into material form. So the sacred feminine, the female, which has evolved into the Ishtar goddess concept, was the key to unlocking or breaking the seal. Well, it's no mystery. There's the XX, which is perfectly combined within the geometry here of this equation. Now, not only that, I'm going to show you something else that it does briefly. We know that this seal is also connected with what is described in Job chapter 38, describing these bands of Orion, okay? Who can bind the sweet influences of the Pleiades or loose the bands of Orion? Well, we know that these Pleiadians and those of Orion are all connected in some way to the conspiracy that's taking place in our world. At least that's what we are told they are connected to. And we usually see this presented to us in a way that's reflective of aliens. But I'm telling you, it's not anything to do with outer space aliens, more like inner space aliens. Okay, because we're talking about spiritual beings. And in relationship to the sons of God, we know that these are not men, because it describes in Scripture. It says they are not men. And we know that it further describes that these beings are twice dead, plucked up by their roots. And we also know that Scripture says that it is only appointed to man once to die. So absolutely, without a doubt, just by a few particular verses alone, we know that these sons of God are not men. They're not mankind. They have been materialized as mankind. They have been materialized as men, the men of mankind, but yet more endowed, more genetically superior, more superior intellectually, spiritually, and physically. And that is because they were sent here to perform a great task. And at the same time, they were to seek to attract the surrounding primitive people's attentions of the world, to see what was going on with these beings that were rumored to have come from the stars. And of course, we know that these beings were to in turn teach these peoples the true spiritual way and begin to establish the true route or the path of civilization on this world, of which, after the rebellion, they failed. And then now we know that our world is plunged into chaos and confusion. In other words, the whole world has become Babylon. Babylon simply means in Hebrew confusion. So the whole world is confused. But nonetheless, if we're talking about beings that have been bound and sealed, okay, the binding or the banding or the loosing, all connected to Pleiades, the Pleiadians, all connected to this constellation of Orion. Well, now, what do you see? You see the very bands of Orion from Job chapter 38 form right before your eyes. What is the Pyramid of Giza or the three pyramids of Giza, what are they considered to be aligned to? They're considered to be aligned to Orion's belt. Well, if you were to go and look or Google a picture of Orion's belt, what you're going to see is that it is in the basic shape of an hourglass. Now we know that this sealing and this binding has something to do with a period of time, does it not? That they've been bound for a period of time. Does not the hourglass represent one of the earliest symbols of time? Well, there you have the connection to Orion, these beings that have been sealed and that are sought to be loosed, if you understand Job 38, right? And then it manifests in this proportion right before your eyes. Right before your eyes. Now I'll take it even one step further. We can go from the understanding of the XX chromosome for the sacred feminine, and then we can go to these that are connected to this constellational understanding of the Pleiades and Orion as those that are being bound, that are using the sacred feminine to loose the seal of this time period that they've been bound in. So there we have the sacred feminine, the two X's, and then we have the beings that have been bound associated with the bands of Orion, how they've been bound, and then we have the time period that these beings are connected and being bound to, the very symbol for it. Now, as I said, let's take it one step further, and we'll connect this back to Ishtar in the fullness of what this philosophy is really going to bring to these peoples that are enveloped in this shadow, that are enveloped in her shadow, the shadow of this philosophy of the sacred feminine as it's wrapped up in the deception of producing these fallen ones into this realm. Because now, if you think about Ishtar, she's also termed the Black Widow. She's also known as the Black Widow. You know that she's known in many negative depictions, assemblages, and figurations. She takes on the symbol of a spider in some perspectives. If you were to look at a picture of a Black Widow, probably one of the most famous poisonous spiders, at least that I can think of, what do you see on its abdomen in bright red? Okay, because Ishtar is also connected with darkness. Ishtar is also connected with shadow. Even though she's connected to Venus, she's also connected to shadow because she is androgynous. She is dualistic. She is both light and dark. Okay? So, what many people forget in her personification of brightness, at the same time with this brightness comes shadow. Now, the Black Widow represents shadow. The blackness represents shadow. The Black Widow represents female. It represents feminine dominance. And the feminine dominance that you see portrayed with this spider is that it eats its male victims. Now, if you can understand the perspective of the prophets also describe that this sacred feminine does not have, or the Ishtar, the queen of heaven, does not have the best interests for Israel. That in the end we see that this, what they bring into this world is actually going to turn on them. And it's recounted in the book of Hosea, it's recounted in the book of Isaiah and Ezekiel. If you know what you're looking for, it's more plain as day in the book of Hosea, but in Isaiah and Ezekiel, you really have to correctly divide the word to see the portions that these prophets describe that basically what they've brought into this world backfires on them. So we know that Ishtar, in the feminine sense, can also be seen in the masculine sense because she's dualistic. A lot of people believe that this coming Antichrist will be in a feminine perspective. Philosophically, absolutely. It's a product of this feminine perspective. It's a product of the sacred feminine. But in reality, it's still going to manifest itself along the masculine portion because at the same time, you have to realize it's trying to mimic the Christ. So it will have to appear as male. But in reality, it has nothing to do with the sexual orientation of either a male or a female of our race, of our kind, because it is in reality a spirit that is neither male or female in a sexual sense. But in a spiritual sense, there is a polarity that does lean either towards a masculine or a feminine perspective. qualities, but it will appear as masculine nonetheless. My point is that the connection for the Black Widow spider to Ishtar is right in your face as well. So we know that if we were to combine just these few things that I've talked about, you can see a story will begin to develop here. We can see that the sacred feminine concept, XX, will actually backfire and not produce the life that they want into this world. It's going to produce the death of the very one that they're trying to produce life and give it to. In other words, this fallen prince who was using this Ishtar philosophy, well, the fallen prince is representing the masculine feature here, is he not? At the very same time, he's using the feminine quality to achieve this. Ishtar, which is now assemblaged of Israel. So this philosophy of the sacred feminine is going to actually bring him not the immortal life that he believes that he's going to find, but it's actually bringing him to his death. Thus, the fractal of the Black Widow spider is now fulfilled. Now, when you want to see the fractal of the Black Widow spider here, we don't see it as Israel itself that's going to bring their fallen prince to his death. We see it as the concept that he has birthed. His plan of using the sacred feminine is now the Black Widow spider that will bring him to his death. It will be the very thing that he is drawn to, but yet will be the very thing that devours him, that causes his non-existence. By his choice and his use of this way to override the design of the true creator and to use and manipulate mankind to achieve his goal, we see that that's going to be the very thing that brings him to his death. Therefore, the Black Widow spider, the use of this Ishtar ideology, philosophy, occult science, the manipulation of the genetics of mankind is going to be the thing that does him in. And it's all right there. It's all right there. And it's recounted in Scripture also. If you can read into the Scripture, see into the distance of what the Scriptures in the correction of the division of the word is trying to tell you, it describes that even this prince is going to fall to the worm, that he is going to not last very long in physical form, that he will be brought to his death. Okay, so he doesn't achieve his immortality in physical. You know, this Ankh Goldman, this golden calf of Samaria, as we see, is going to be cut off and will be destroyed. So understand that if you have eyes to see, and I know that many of you do, but not all eyes see exceedingly far into the distance. Okay, it's about seeing beyond the current borders or parameters of your own understanding and going into the equational distance of where these things add up to. And if you can do that, you can begin to see it all at one time. Basically, like I'm showing you, it's all right here. Okay, it's all right here. Now, as I've told you before, we've talked about these beings being bound in crystal, have we not? Yes, we have. And we know that the crystal itself is hexagonal. And we could associate this with the most common hexagonal crystal known, and that would be quartz crystal. And then we could associate this quartz crystal also with the interior stones or building blocks of the Great Pyramid of Giza. All right? So the Great Pyramid of Giza contains an incredible amount of quartz crystal within it. And I told you that these beings themselves are bound, at least the ones that, not the living descendancy known as the Danites, that have been living and dying and are still maintaining a populace, okay, in physical form. But once a portion or a member of this populace dies, then that spirit, it can't ascend back to heaven, right? Well, that's because, it says that in the Bible, in Revelation chapter 12, they're banned from heaven. They can't enter back into heaven, okay? And not until this period of sevenfold 70 generations is completed, and then this judgment, this righteous judgment, is finally had, okay? But before that, they bring this wicked judgment, all right? Well, if If they cannot go to heaven, and there's been many of them dying all throughout our histories, well, they've got to be bound somewhere, right? They've got to be sealed somewhere. Well, they're sealed in the Pyramid of Giza. That's right. And then here's our symbolage for the pyramids of Giza. It's right there. It's right everywhere you look. Well, within the Pyramid of Giza, as I told you, is a lot of quartz crystal. And then, of course, the reflection that the Book of Enoch describes them being bound in crystal. Well, now we can see the symbolage for the quartz crystal right here. This is basically a perfect side view of what you would see if you were looking at a quartz crystal. Now, I can take this very same symbol and show you what it would look like once we cut the quartz crystal in half. And lo and behold, what we're going to find is this same tetrahedral geometry as we look over it. And let's just go ahead and do that right now. All right, here is our quartz crystal shaft with its point on the top here. Now, basically, you're looking at a squished up version of what you're seeing right here. It's the same equation, is it not? Now, let me show you how I said that this is when the quartz crystal, if it's a cylinder long this way, and we'll say we're holding it on its side, and it's got its little 6 sides up there, we cut it in half like that. All right, when you cut it in half, if you were to take one of these pieces and hold it up and look straight forward at the half that had been cut, that's the shape that you see, because the quartz crystal has 6 sides. It has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, now watch what happens. The quartz crystal geometry is going to equate perfectly back into the star tetrahedron. Perfectly. And it's all right there. It is all right there. Okay? Over and over and over again. Everything that I've ever told you on the entirety of this video history can be explained with this geometry right here. Everything, the entire story, the entire creation story that is connected to the binding and the sealing of these beings. It's all right there. And then the rest of the story that's connected to our very own creation and our very own dominion over this earth, over this terrestrial energy construct. All right. Basically, I guess what I'll do is I'll just end this video here and use it as a promotional video for part number 6. Because I just really don't have enough time right now to continue the video here that I wanted to talk about. So what I'll do is I'll come back and I'll do this video here. This video is going to be about Matthew chapter 7 verse 13, where Jesus describes that the path or the way that leadeth to destruction is the broad way. All right, and basically Jesus is telling us, as he's seeing into the distance, he's telling us that this is where this millstone is going to be cast. It's going to be cast at the place that's associated with the broad way. All right, when I come back, I'm going to show you a unique connection to what he is describing here, where we can pinpoint this precisely on a globe, a model of the earth that has the longitude and latitude lines in place. And when we follow these parables of truth that Jesus is offering us, we can precisely locate, not only by our understanding of the broad way being connected to New York City, but we can precisely locate where this destruction is going to take place in a unique way. And I'll just save that for when I return. Thanks.